guys, so since I started this channel, loads and loads of you guys have asked me to do a video on exam stress and revision techniques. So this is that video. Good solid intro. Good. Yep, nailed it. So I just want to start this video by saying a couple of things. It doesn't matter where you're from, what type of exam you're taking, you can only ever do your best. And that's the advice that my dad used to give me all the time. And it took off so much pressure from me because I knew that if I walked into an exam and I gave it my all and I revised as hard as I could and I didn't do as well as I'd hoped, yes, I'd be disappointed, but I'd done all that I could. If you can walk out of an exam with your head held high, then that's all you can do. So I would honestly say it will be disappointing if you don't get the grades you want, especially if you need them to get into uni or you know, whatever you need them for. But as long as you try your hardest when it comes to revision and in the exam, then that's all you can do, and you should be proud of yourself. And secondly, it's been nearly 7 years since I left school, which, you know, makes me feel really old. So I can't really remember all of my revision techniques, and I can't really remember like what any of my exam questions were or anything like that. I can't really remember how I felt during my GCSEs because it was a long time ago. So I've had to look up some stuff online, do a little bit of research, and hopefully this video helps because it's to do with how you learn and the methods that will help you specifically. So, okay. And thirdly, I do know that I didn't revise that much at school or at college. I didn't really do any revision until like the last minute, and it stressed me out loads. And if I could go back and change anything about school, I would have done my homework and I would have worked harder. And I sound like a mum, I sound like a parent or a teacher saying that, but genuinely I regret not studying harder. So if I could give you any advice, and to be honest, I don't know how many of you would take it, because I certainly wouldn't have taken that advice when I was your age, but do as much work as you can, because really you only get one shot at school or college. You can retake exams, but you can't really retake all of those years. So just work your hardest. Okay, so firstly we're going to look at which type of learner you are. There are 4 categories. You won't fit into one perfectly. You may be a mix of 2 or 3. But hopefully these techniques that are designed for each category, hopefully a blend of these will help you. So the 4 types of learner that you can be are auditory, visual, kinesthetic, and read and write. So in order for you to find out which type of learner you are, I'm just going to talk about how these type of learners genuinely pick up things. So auditory learners learn by listening to things. It is mostly to do with the sense of hearing. You may be an auditory learner if you have a great memory of past conversations and you pick up lyrics in songs really easily. Like, it may only take you one listen of a song to know all of the words. You may remember exactly what someone said, when they said it, where they said it, because your ears are taking in all of the information. Auditory learners may also have difficulty interpreting graphs and charts and anything kind of visual. This can also include reading slower than others. I'm not saying all auditory learners read slowly, but it is just something that, if you find that that is something that you struggle with, you may be an auditory learner. Now, visual learners, it's quite obvious, you learn by seeing things. You may be a visual learner if when you're reading a book you can picture every single situation, every scenario perfectly. I know I can't really do this. When an author is describing like a place, I can't really visualize it that well. Visual learners tend to be good at reading charts and diagrams and generally anything that they can see, they can just soak in. Visual learners also may find it very easy to read highlighted sections of pages. So if your teacher gives you something and she's highlighted something, your eyes are very quickly drawn to that, and that's the main information that you take in. So anything that's bright and has a lot of colour, you find it easy to take in. So those 3 things may mean that you are primarily a visual learner. Now, a kinesthetic learner is someone that learns by doing things, physically doing things. Kinesthetic learners tend to be good at building things or cooking things. Things that are physical, they pick up really quickly. For example, like if you've cooked a meal once, you instantly know how to cook it again next time without needing to look it up or anything like that. You just remember what you did. Kinesthetic learners may also enjoy active lessons like PE. No, I didn't enjoy PE. But also things like physical science lessons where you're actually doing tests and things like that, which I actually love doing. Kinesthetic learners may also find it very difficult to take in information when they're in a class and they're just sitting and writing. Even though you'd think that, you know, writing things down is doing something, you may find that your attention span is very short and you can't really concentrate on what someone is saying. You just want to get on and do something. And finally, you have the read and write learners. Now, this is what I would class myself as. I consider myself a read and write learner. So read and write learners generally really like to read and really like to write. That's just obvious. really, if you think about it. Read and write learners tend to prefer to work independently rather than in a group of others. You may find that you take a lot of notes and a lot more notes than anyone else in your class. You may just write down everything that your teacher is saying. Read and write learners also find it easiest to work best in quiet spaces where no one is talking to them and they can't hear any music. They may also become frustrated with teachers that only really go over a subject very, very briefly, and they may find it easier to ask questions, put their hand up and just ask for more detail, which some people in the class don't like. And finally, read and write learners also tend to learn every single word in something. If there's something they don't understand, they'll pick up a dictionary and they'll find out the definition of a word. So now that you hopefully know which type of learner you are, now we're going to sort out which type of revision methods are best for each type of learner. So starting with auditory. So one of the best things that an auditory learner can do is ask a lot of questions. Ask your teacher anything you do not understand. And of course that's something that I would recommend anyone do. But auditory learners find it easier to learn when someone is telling them information. So even if you have to see your teacher after class, just ask them questions. Get them to talk and just talk through everything that you don't understand. Auditory learners may also benefit from reading back their own notes and recording them. Grab a dictaphone or a phone with a voice recorder and just read out your notes to yourself. You don't necessarily have to listen to them back, but the fact that you are actually saying them means that you're also hearing them, and it helps you. Another way auditory learners can help themselves is to watch videos. No, not my videos, not stereotypical YouTube videos, videos on the subject that you are trying to learn. Although this also fits in with visual learning, obviously with a video you're hearing things as well. Now another technique that auditory learners can use is mnemonic devices. What does that mean? Now you may already know what a mnemonic device is, but you haven't actually heard that term being used. It's something that helps you take information, compress it down into something that you can easily remember. This can be used in auditory learning and visual learning. One example of this is learning the colours of the rainbow. Richard of York gave battle in vain, which are the colours of the rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. You know, well, come on, it's been a few years, but that is an example of it. There's also one where you can take your fists and look at them for the months of the year. So it's like January, February, March, April, so you can learn how many days are in each month. As you can probably tell, that doesn't really help me because that is for auditory and visual, which are the two that I'm not. But some people find them really, really helpful. I know there was one for the planets as well, but I can't remember. Something about jam sandwiches, I think. I don't know, okay? But I will say, if mnemonic devices do help you, I actually found a generator online that will help you create those sort of abbreviations and acronyms, so I'll leave that in the description if that helps you. And the last piece of advice I would give to auditory learners is revise in silence. Go upstairs to your room, no TV, no music, just silence, and just listen to the information that you are trying to learn. If you have anything else on, it will distract you and you'll find that the information just won't soak in as well for you. Okay, so moving on to visual learners, the people that learn simply by looking. I'm very jealous of you because it would have saved me a lot of work. First thing you do is when you're in lessons or you're reading through textbooks, copy all of the diagrams that you see. Copy every single diagram, every pie chart, every sort of diagram of scientific things like osmosis and things like that. Now this also kind of blends in with kinesthetic learning in terms of, you know, if you're drawing something, you're also doing something. But if drawings help you, actually physically drawing them will help you, you know, it helps stay in your memory. So second tip is use good textbooks. You can get loads of textbooks from stationery shops in the UK. There's one called W.H. Smith and they do all kind of course books and course guides. Look on the internet, get cheap course guides and just read them, because literally if you just have a book that's full of text, it's going to bore the hell out of you. Get ones with diagrams and things that will help you. Thirdly, as I said, for auditory learners, watch lots of videos, but in this case it's not the audio that's going through, it is the visual side of things that is soaking into your brain. Now another technique that blends in with read and write is using highlighters. I found it very helpful to use highlighters. Just highlight any passage in any kind of book, even if you get in trouble for it. It helps so much. Again, with visual, it's a case of, you know, you're drawing attention to certain points. So if you feel, you know, I'm going to highlight that, next time you pick up that book, you're going to see that and go straight to it, and hopefully those colours will help you soak in that information. Another technique, which I admittedly have never used, is flashcards. Apparently this really helps visual learners. Simply like copying out questions and answers on little flashcards and then just revising with friends or even just with yourself and testing yourself, going through the cards and just, you know, even if you take them down to your parents, you know, can you read out this question for me and I'll tell you the answer. It should hopefully help. And lastly, replace words and facts with drawings. I know this sounds kind of strange, just drawing instead of doing an essay. But in terms of things, like I said before, things like osmosis, where, you know, you have to learn the stages of a scientific process, draw them out. I actually found this really helpful, even though I was terrible at drawing, especially in scientific subjects where there are a lot of processes. Just drawing out the steps and stages of either experiments or, you know, just scientific kind of things, processes, it helps a lot. So for kinesthetic learners, again, this is learning by doing. If you are a kinesthetic learner, you need to satisfy the need to do things. Simply sitting and reading a textbook probably won't help you if you're primarily a kinesthetic learner. You'll probably find yourself getting very bored. And of course, the more bored you get, the more distracted you get, and the more you read, none of that information is sinking into your brain whatsoever. You're just flicking through, and it's a waste of time. So firstly, as I just said, for visual learners, flashcards may help you because you are writing and you're actually producing these flashcards. And of course, having someone test you on them, you're actually physically doing something. Kinesthetic learners tend to have a really, really good memory for things when they're actually physically doing them. So a couple of times through a flashcard game, it should help a lot. Again, I will admit I never tried it simply because I was quite lazy when it came to revising. I was like, oh, I don't need to do any of that. But I had friends that did do it at school, and they used to carry their flashcards around with them, and they said it really helped them. So there you go. Now, kinesthetic learners may also find it useful to only study in very short bursts, but more regularly than other types of learners. So only revise for like 10-15 minutes at a time, finish a paragraph and then take a break for 5 minutes, because otherwise you will get very distracted. Kinesthetic learners have quite a short attention span for things like just reading and writing. So literally do things in short bursts and then go and do something, satisfy your need to do, and then come back. Do another 10-15 minutes, then go away for 5 minutes. Come back for 10-15 minutes and just carry on that cycle. Do it in short bursts and then stop when you're getting really bored. When you're getting fed up to the point where you're just like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, stop. Because from that point on, no information will sink into your brain. Another thing that kinesthetic learners can do is apply examples to facts. So if you're learning about gravity, take an example of dropping a mobile phone off of a building or something like that. Visualize that. I know it sounds like it's visual learning, but if you're applying something practical to a theory, it should help you. I know there was one theory, it was like an elephant sits on a seesaw and you have to work out like newtons and all that. See, it's been a long time, but I still remember things like that. Another thing kinesthetic learners can do is study with others. Now, I would say, honestly, if you're a read and write learner or a kinesthetic learner, or even an auditory learner, working with others will really, really help you. Find other people that want to learn with you and set up a little revision group. Just do it in your school library or after school, go around to someone's house or something like that. You don't have to be best friends with them. Just find people that want to study with you. Even ask your teacher if they would be willing to set up a revision group during a lunchtime or a break time in the classroom. Because most of the time teachers are in their classrooms during lunch just grading and things like that. So it would definitely help you because you're not only learning, like I said, you're interacting with people, you're physically doing something as you're learning. Now there is one point that I found on the internet that said, do things while you're studying, such as like, you know, tapping your fingers or squeezing a stress ball. I personally wouldn't recommend that because you will just find yourself getting very distracted and then your attention will be on that other thing rather than revising. But if that helps you, if you find that associating a fact or whatever you're revising with an action, then hopefully when you're in the exam you can think of that action and it will remind you of all your information. I don't know if that works, I didn't personally try it, but that is another suggestion from the internet. The great vast internet where everything is true. Also, some kinesthetic learners find that having music on in the background helps. For some reason, you sort of associate facts with songs because it's like you're doing something. You're listening to music as you're reading. I can't do that. I have to study in silence, but that is another read and write trait, which I will talk about in a minute. But yeah, some people find music helps. So try it out, try listen to the radio or something like that in the background. If you're finding that it's helping you and keeping you entertained as you're working, then great. But if not, obviously work in silence. And finally, if you are a read and write learner, such as myself, this is going to sound very obvious, but whenever you're reading a revision guide or a course guide or a study guide, whatever you want to call it, take notes. Just write out your own notes. Write everything out in your own words, like a shortened version, or bullet points. Bullet points is another good one. Rewrite that entire course or whatever it is you're studying in your own words. Again, I suppose that is also tying in with kinesthetic because you're also doing something as you're learning. Another one is, as your teacher is talking, write down everything they're saying. Maybe not like what they have for lunch, but any time that, you know, you think, oh, I could write that down, is it important? Write it down, because then you've got it. Another technique, and I would say this is good for any type of learner, don't lose the handouts that teachers give you. Don't lose the photocopied sheets or any of the homework sheets. Don't lose any of it, because otherwise you will just, you know, you need to rely on these things. If you're a read and write learner, you need those things to revise. Try to break out the habit of forgetting your exercise books. Just keep them in your locker or just keep them in your bag at all times. All of your books if you have to. Don't ever forget your books, because then you have to write on a spare sheet of paper that a teacher gives you and they're all mad at you anyway, and then you won't copy that, you probably won't copy that text over to a book, and you'll just lose it, and that's a whole lesson just wasted. And the last technique, which actually is the opposite of what I said for visual learners, when there is a diagram or a chart or something that is visual, turn it into words. Write down what is happening in each process of every diagram in a science book. Write down what is happening in a pie chart, you know, how to read it, you know, what the percentages are. Just explain what is happening in these diagrams in words, because then you're writing it out. You're writing down everything that your brain is thinking, and that helps read and write learners a lot. And the last point for everyone is, if you are taking a mock exam, I know they have been doing those in the UK recently, look at what you got wrong and really study why you got it wrong. Not just, oh yeah, that makes sense. Actually go back onto that topic and learn it until you have 100% got it down. If you need help from a teacher, that is what they're there for. I know teachers aren't always that nice, but it's not only, you know, not only nice of them, but it's also in their best interests for you to get the best grade possible. And if you have a teacher that isn't that willing to help you, there will probably be more teachers in that department that will help you. And as I said in the beginning, just don't stress out. I know the pressure you guys are under to get the perfect grade so you can get into uni, get into college, etc. And I know how disappointing it can be when you think you're going to get an A and you get a C or a D. And it can be quite a shock and you think, oh my god, I'm going to fail this. But the more you stress out, the more distracted and the more frazzled your brain is going to be, and you can't really learn when you are stressed out. As my dad said, you can only do your best. So apply yourself, work as hard as you can, and walk out of that exam hall with your head held high, saying to yourself, I couldn't have done better. Whatever date you're watching this video, good luck with any exams that you have, and I hope these techniques helped you. So yeah, I shall see you guys in a couple of days. Bye, and good luck. Yeah, I already said good luck. I feel sorry for any auditory learners listening to me. I really do.